And the flow tales for us are untold stories of water. We have here Patrick, who was one of the winners. Over to you, Patrick, for you to share the screen if you can.
Yeah, well, it's very nice to see you in the face, all of you, the digital face. And thanks for arranging this thing. I'm going to just talk about two things that relate to water and my work that are different from the story that was part of the Flow Tales. So I hope that's okay. So kind of related to the prompts that you had sent us, there's a question in my work. And in the question, I think, is also kind of an answer of sorts. But the question for me is, how do we tell the story of water or the story of any part of the environment in a way that allows us to connect? Yeah. So there's a lot of talk about like things that we're destroying, and but for me, a more interesting and maybe more useful way to frame this whole ecological discussion is to acknowledge that we human beings are like, we're not really taking part in the world in a meaningful way anymore. And I think a lot of us feel that, we're not cultivating relationships with the living world, animals, plants, bacteria, the elements, the spiritual parts of the world. And one of the answers for me is to, and I think for a lot of artists, and you too, is to show the beauty and richness that's there and to give a hint at it through our work. Yeah. So I think a lot of us artists are kind of used to seeing the world in this little bit deeper way, but I think a lot of us are not used to it. And one of my really good mentors who just passed away last year, Larry Korn, who was a soil scientist, and he used to tell me that, our challenge is to become partners again with the rest of the earth. And I thought that was a really beautiful way of putting it. And so in Japan, to get to this cloud that's hanging in the picture, in Japan, we formed an artist collective called the Typhoon Queens. And this was part of our first exhibition, which explored the water cycle. And we asked ourselves this question of, how can we tell the story of water in a way that creates an experience for people of taking part in that cycle, of being part of that water? And where are the entry points to this story for people? So for us, each artist in the collective, there's 5 of us, worked on different parts of the cycle, the water cycle. And it started here with the clouds. So the top floor of the gallery space was clouds. This cloud is made from newspapers of the countries that all of the artists are from, America and Korea and Japan. And we melted down those newspapers into water and we reformed it to create another work. Also in the top floor was a film with poetry about one of the artist's mothers and their relationship, of using poetry as a way to talk about the relationship to water. And also in this gallery is a cloud image. And this cloud is a protagonist in a story that helps us dissolve the barriers between our countries and reimagine, clouds can freely cross borders. Why can't we? There's a raindrop system in the top of the gallery also. And this rain falls through very slowly on a line. And so visitors can follow the rain. And we've put a hole in the floor of the gallery, and the rain comes out into the bottom floor. Oh, these are out of order. To the bottom floor and drips on the head of this figure. This is our Typhoon Queen. And then you might see in the corner, the four corners of this umbrella are plants. These are medicinal herb plants that each of us has a strong connection to. And these plants are then blended to produce a tea. So to complete the experience for the visitor who comes to the gallery, they end up at the end of this drinking a cup of this tea and becoming a part of that cycle in a physical sense. So in general, what we're doing in the art installation, or not just this, but in workshops or anything that we do, in relating ourselves to nature, something I noticed is that when people enter into this way of thinking, once they experience this kind of a different way of sensing the world or being a part of the world, that people start to recognize some beauty they didn't see before. And I think we all have a innate ability to know ourselves as ecological beings. Yeah, we all know how to do this. We've forgotten how to do it. Yeah. So these artworks are a way to remind us of this. And in our world, I think there's two things that we're missing personally to help people get this connection back. And I think they're really simple things. And the two things are, place and permission. And a place is just, a tree, a river, wetlands, all of these elements that have been kind of erased from our urban lives. But for me, the important piece also is this permission, the social permission. Like people feel afraid to sit down and talk to the river, right? It's totally a weird thing for people to imagine doing. But actually in Korea and Japan, this permission exists already. People pray to trees. There are kami, the spirits in trees in Japan, and it's normal to go and pray to that tree. In Korea, they have the Dangsan Namu. It's a similar concept. It's a god tree, and each village has a god tree. And I think these kind of traditions exist in many places in the world. But gosh, what if I was to go and pray to the water in a fountain in Los Angeles? People would think I'm totally crazy. So it's just it's a social permission thing. It's a way that our society, our culture views our relationship and our place in the world. So we try to break this barrier down with art. Yeah. We did a festival in Osaka called the City is Nature Festival, and the theme was water. So in this whole festival, we have musicians, artists, filmmakers, we have yoga teachers, we have high school students, retired women, university professors. We have all these really different people taking part in this festival. And there's one thing that ties all this chaos together. There's like only one rule. And the rule is to ask yourself, no matter what you're doing in this festival, what is your relationship with water? So it's a really simple prompt. Yeah. And everything we did in this festival was rooted in that question. So that brought everything together. Every artwork, every music performance, every workshop. And we learned a lot of different ways of seeing and expressing. We found water in factories in the neighborhood. We found water in the groundwater. We found water in the air, in the history of the buildings. One woman found her connection with water is the amniotic fluid. She's a mother of 2 young girls. And so all of these things entered into our consciousness of ways to see water and ourselves. And a lot of participants asked at the end of this, they asked, like, when's the next time we can do this? You know, can we do this festival again? I want to do this again. And I thought about it, and I didn't have a good answer then, but my answer now is, you know, you can do it now. You can do it tomorrow. Like, the only difference between your normal daily life and this festival is that I asked you a question to frame your way of thinking and doing. What's my relationship with water? And because we're an arts festival, people can, you know, if it's normally not okay to be walking around thinking this way and talking to water and doing this stuff, but people will join it if it's an art project, right? Because they understand, oh, okay, it's art, so I'm going to do something weird and I'm going to learn new ways of seeing the world. But that just distinction is just in our mind, yeah. So I hope these kind of things encourage people to know that it's okay to have this mentality in their daily life, you know, and not just in the context of an art exhibition. And so in all of this stuff, I think the important point that we've learned, and we've done workshops, probably over 100 workshops now, to connect people to different parts of the environment. And, you know, there's 0 times in all of these workshops, I think, where someone didn't come and say to us, you know, wow, I never knew the world was like this. I never knew I could see the world like this. Wow, I never knew dirt was beautiful, you know. These reactions happen every time. And so I'm really convinced we can do this. You know, we can all get this sense back and this relationship back, and we can reclaim our status as ecological beings, I like to say. And I think it's not really about, you know, you can use art or science or scholarship or whatever. But for me, it's more important that whatever you're doing is grounded in like a really strong, honest relationship between yourself and nature that says, hey, you know, I'm a human being, but you know what? You know, I'm also part of this living earth. And if we can really be really honest about that sentiment, about that way of thinking, then yeah, I think it's really not difficult to engage people in a deep sense of what it means to be humans. I think, I don't know, that's probably way over 10 minutes. So
Absolutely fine. Please carry on if you got any more to say. I think that's the right amount of time.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, this last one is one of our workshops with connecting to soil.